Hi, I'm Eric.
This is a family retort?
You're not going to introduce yourself?
Oh shit, I'm so sorry. Can we start again?
Nope, too late. We started recording. You're going to deal with it.
And
Anyway,
I'm Aurora.
we're we're cousins. Most of the time we agree on issues. Sometimes we don't.
And we'll fight at the dinner table so you don't have to.
All right. So for this episode, this is Cyberpunk month. So we just got done watching, I think, one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Ghost in the Shell.
It was my first time watching it, and I really enjoyed it. Eric obviously has great taste in cyberpunk movies. So today we'll be discussing it for Cyberpunk Month.
Yeah. So I kind of was making some notes because I have seen it a few times. Uh, for anybody out there who hasn't seen it yet, go watch it. And if you haven't by now, we are going to be talking about spoilers. But your time is way past. All right. This movie has been out since like the 80s. All right. So let's just talk about the movie in general. What aspects of the movie did you like before we start really delving into like some of the questions it brings up?
So obviously, we commented during the movie several times about just how beautiful the cinematography was. I think there's really something to watch about old movies when you see old classics, how much craft went into things, the hand painted, the cinematography, the excellence. And so you can tell that so much care was made into the movie, and you can tell how lived in the world is. You can tell just by people's dialogue and all that stuff how much of that world is fully formed within the creator's mind too. I think sometimes you can really tell when something is half baked
Oh, yeah.
and when you can be fully immersed. I also really enjoy the urbanism of it to a certain degree, like
Just the like
the
the level of
cityscapes.
how it looked like lived in. I think we commented a
Yeah.
few times on that, where it
Yeah.
just felt very real. It was very populated. The back alleys looked dirty and dingy and lived very very lived in. I think is a good way of putting it. One of the
Well,
things,
and the cityscapes are very, when it was, I want to say like cinematic, because when they can show you on the pedestrian scale, and then in certain scenes they can show you on the grand city view scale.
just
And
like the
the
largeness of it, the hugeness of it.
for example, when the villain is running, well, not the villain, but one of the perpetrators that they're chasing is running through that alley, and you see this huge giant buildings on either side with that stripe of sky like canyons, and it gives this almost oppressive feel. Like they really did such a great job with the environment.
It it,
So
it made him feel
just
like he
from
was
a
trapped.
vibes perspective, like killing it.
So
From a
one of the
beauty
things
perspective.
we talked about during the movie, and I have seen some behind the scenes kind of stuff on this, was the sound design. So
Oh.
like I was telling you when they were shooting, how I don't know if you noticed, like I said, it's taken me a few times, but the impacts on different material sounded different. So when the guy shot at the truck they were in that was flipped over, how it sounded a lot different than when it was hitting concrete or water or any other kind of material. They meticulously went out and shot different material to know what it sounded like when it got hit. And then
And
they
they
implemented
recorded
that in the
that,
movie.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did
So
they record specifically those gun sounds, or did they recreate those sounds with
I,
Foley?
I couldn't tell you 100%. I would like to
Okay.
think they use that, but at the same time, that can be fairly difficult too, and it's a little bit easier, but
That's
uh,
fair. I
they have
think
a
it's really
good
interesting.
reference point for the Foley people to do that.
I think it's interesting how we each pick up different things because I'm like, oh, the hand painted art, you can see this specific detail and this and how it's drawn this way with this composition. And you notice the sound design and of how guns are shot because you have more experience with guns, so you know what gunshots would sound like. So of course, the ones that are more accurate and how different that is, it gives you a more tactile, lived-in sense, more
Oh yeah.
immersive.
No, these guys had a
But it's
great eye for detail, and I still love how it looks too. It's just fantastic. But I just saw an
but
interview with
I
that, and I thought it was really
but I
cool.
think that it's also very you. I think it's really interesting how we pick up different things from movies. That's all. Like because you are interested in guns and you're interested in sound design, that's the fact that stuck out to you.
Yeah. So
I think it's cool. I love this fun fact. Thanks
so
for sharing it.
on since this was your first viewing, this I feel like can be a little bit intimidating with the plot and whatnot because I watched it when I was fairly young first, and plot kind of flew over my head. I was pretty young at the time, so I was like, "Oh, cool action!" Blah. But then as I
I
get
think that's
older,
what's great
too,
about the movie, right? Like you can appreciate it for the cool action and the vibes, and you can appreciate it for just like the clear level plot of like, okay, bad guy catch bad guy resolution, and then you can go in through the intricacies of the world, the political going
yeah,
ons, and this and that. And I could feel my brain stretching to try to grasp all of it. And the last time I felt my brain doing that was when I read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo in high school. Because
really,
there's just so many different plot points that you're trying to keep track of at the same time. Like you're trying to remember every single weave of the plot, right? Where you're trying to go back in time to remember all the names and how different things because I'm like, okay, so there was that guy and who was that guy? And they're like, and then it's a foreign minister. But I honestly think they really executed it well because like even
yeah,
my fuzzy brain was able to wrap it around.
yeah. It's
And so
definitely
they did do it in a way that I think is accessible for most people. It's not out of
okay.
reach for anybody.
Good,
I mean,
because
you do have to be paying attention and you have to be able to pay attention. And cuz if you miss something, they might bring it up again, but it's not and they do explicitly tell you things, so it's not like, "Oh, a blink and you'll miss it" moment, but it isn't the same thing 5 minutes over and over again. It's not it's a lot of the things that are said are more subtle than some modern pop culture stuff that we
oh yeah,
can be
definitely.
used to today.
So
I also thought when you think about it, the pacing is so different time period wise then versus now, and I just kind of appreciated it. It really good movies make you want to live your own life more in the moment.
that's fair.
Like I don't know.
So okay, um, I do think because I have seen it a few times. You pick up on things that you didn't notice. Like I had mentioned, the Major's body, right? Because she's basically a cyborg, and cyborg is taking a human brain, right, and then putting it in basically a fake body where she's basically all titanium. Her muscles are enhanced. Her brain is enhanced. Literally, there's almost nothing left of her, human wise,
Yeah,
other than her
so
brain.
was that so I was under the impression that it was just like a brain floating in a vat of goo in a mechanical body. And so I was like, why is she have this human body fleshy look if she's mechanical? And that was something I was curious about because what level of cyborganization is somebody? Because a cyborg this is one of the questions is what is a cyborg? What level of human and machine melding creates a cyborg?
Yeah.
And
Well, they talk about the ghost. So I know they kind of passed over it, and they explore this in the series a lot more. Is what is your ghost? So they have a name for it, and that's essentially your soul. That's your memories, who you are as a person, and while yes, you may be able to copy it or put a backup in it, let's say your brain explodes, but you can put your ghost in another machine. Well, what does that make you at that point? Does that make you a human, or is that just a copy of your original? And they kind of glance on it here a little bit, because they talk about the puppet master, right, which was the artificial intelligence that gained sentience by basically diving in the net and doing things for the other government organization. Uh, and then what makes that like the conversation between when they were talking to each other, when the puppet master got captured.
Well, so here's what's interesting is since time immemorial, the question has always been mind versus body, right?
Yeah.
And that's partially what this question is. And then now we're going, oh, humans versus machine. But it's honestly, in this case, it's almost just an extension of the mind versus body question.
Yeah.
And what makes this AI a being is being put in a body.
Yep. Because once he gets trapped in the body, he goes, well, does this not make me a human now? Like, who are you to judge what I am, and don't I have the same rights as you now? Where they're trying to basically capture it back, and the guy's like, well, you're just basically a program, or you're just a machine, you're just artificial intelligence. He's like, well, aren't you the same thing? It's just different organization of how it is. You have neurons, while I have basically wires and
But
a
I think
machine.
this movie is interesting in that I think it has the opposite conclusion to what we think, because we think we are our memories and our minds and our thoughts and our emotions and our self-determinism, our soul, the quote-unquote ghost. But I think in this movie, the AI says that what makes us human is a body. Because he says that once he gets put in a body, he says he's no different from a human. So it is not sentience that makes you human, it is the body. That is the conclusion of the movie.
Well,
that's what I feel like that is what I feel like is what the movie is saying or what the AI is saying through that subtly. It's because we always assume we think because I think we think we are our minds.
But he's saying, I don't know. Okay, I kind of see what you're saying. So you're saying that because he gets a body and he kind of overtly says, well, aren't I, like I'm a human now? It's a little bit more dialogue heavy. We're summarizing quite a bit. But it's, well, now that I have a body, don't I have the same rights as a human, essentially, is what he's saying. Kind of. And they basically go, no, because you're a program, you're not actually human. He's like, well, I have the same functionality as you. And then, towards the end conversation, it's, he wants to do what all humans want to do and reproduce. But he is incapable of doing that himself, because if he basically...
He does not just want to reproduce, he also wants to die.
Well, I don't want to say die. He wants to become something more. That's not necessarily death, though.
He does say he'll die.
Well, he does. But I don't think that matters as much, if that makes sense. He wants to do something more important, which is become something greater, if that makes sense.
He wants... there's a scene in the movie where I'm like, I want to bookmark this because it's so great, because this movie specifically has 2 different points where it talks about how important diversity is. In the very beginning, where there's this guy who's like, hey, I don't have anything, why do you want me? And she's like, you are a regular guy, we need to have you on our team. You have very few cybernetic implants, you're human, you're a family guy, you're just a good, solid dude, we need that. in this dynamic, we need to have different people who think differently. We need this. We need you here.
Yes.
And and then again, when the puppet master talks about human need to diversify, he says, I can copy myself, but that's not reproduction. We need to be able to diversify and be different and do different things. And how over specialization is death. So I think that that's a really interesting thing that they really want us to absorb because they bring it up two separate times, twice, with two different characters
Yeah, I can see
who
that.
happen to agree.
And I
And so
think
it's
it
not
is
just reproduction, it's diversifying.
to become something more, to become more than the sum of your parts. I think is kind of what a lot of
Yeah.
this too, and not just like, oh, I'm a android, and that it kind of has a good take on humanity itself. Whereas, well, are you more than the sum of your parts? And in order for you to evolve as, let's say, a person, how do you go about doing that?
And this was also created in the 80s. And
Yeah, I believe so. Get the exact date.
oh, yeah, that'd be great. And I think it's really interesting where this was before the age of computers. So they had just like this little blip in here of like, we do not fully comprehend what humans will become. And
Okay,
it
okay, hold on.
is both in awe and fear. And I just feel like it's a very
M-
interesting marker of the times.
Minor correction. It was
Yeah?
made in 1995.
95.
Yes,
Okay.
but it's an
The
adaptation from
movie?
Ghost in the Shell, obviously. Um, so let me see when the. But the original run of Ghost of the Shell came out in 1989 to 1991.
Okay.
So, these things were kind of at the advent of computer technology, too.
Yeah. So this is a movie that I could see rewatching so I can understand the finer plot points. What makes this a movie for you that makes you go back to and rewatch it so many times? What makes this such a classic, such a favorite for you?
I think a lot of things. So, the action is just really bar none one of the best.
So beautiful.
It's
Agreed.
it's few and far between, but it's done very well. It flows very well. Then the plot points where you know what is going on with the puppet master, how does that play into things, and it makes you think about just, well, like, I guess a good question is, what is it to be a person? What makes you you? Um, and that's kind of why I like it too, because you sit there and think about it, and depending on, I guess, what's going on in your life, the question can change or the answer can change for you. You know,
Oh,
so like you said, the point of, well, it sounded like from the and or the artificial, I guess, intelligence sentience, that having a body makes him, I guess, maybe not necessarily human, but a sentient being. I think that's a good way of putting it. Versus what a lot of the people, the actual humans, say, well, what makes them human is their mind inside these things. So it doesn't matter. You could replace the body all you want, as long as you keep that mind there. They're still human.
right. Exactly. The brain cells.
Yeah. See, because they even pointed that out too, where it's the brain cells, and then once that merge happens with Major and then the puppet master, she becomes something more, and you kind of see some of that, which I think
So,
is fascinating.
so to you, what this question of what makes a person at different times, you've watched it at different times in your life, and it makes a different question and a different answer each time.
Well, maybe not a different question, but the answers can change, based off of what you believe, right? Do you believe that the mind makes you human, or do you believe that the body makes you human? Does having kids, reproduction, make you more human than
Oh.
somebody who doesn't? That's kind of where you know, another question that you can ask watching this movie. Or, like, we're on the advent of advanced AIs, right? What if
Hmm.
they start writing their own code to make them more, I guess, intelligent or more aware? At what point do you go, if they can answer the what is it, the questions to find out if something is sentient
Mm.
and think, at what point do you consider that maybe a living breathing person, or maybe not breathing, but artificial
An
intelligence
existence.
in existence? Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's
What
that's
did you
why I
take
like
from
this
it?
movie.
What did you take from it this time?
I like the point that you made where the artificial, because I never had thought about that, where the puppet master is in the body and then is conversation with the basically the people that bring him back. Was,
Hmm.
am I not, a being now that I have a body? Why shouldn't I have the same rights as you, essentially, or the same protections? I think it was said.
Yeah, protections. Because he asked for asylum.
Yes,
I think it's interesting that we keep using he pronouns despite the fact that the body was put in a female form.
true. I think it was just opportunity.
Well, I think it partially because we delineate Major as she, so it's just to have the binary, he or she, have a difference, but also because they keep referring to the puppet master as a proprietary he.
Yeah, they did say we refer to it as he, even though it doesn't have a gender.
Yeah.
So I mean that can, I mean even then, if you're having, let's say, gender identity questions, this uh, this is an interesting take on gender, and again, you're
Oh, interesting.
if you're able to swap bodies and put your mind in something else, what. Oh, here, I'll use an example from the TV show. I know you don't you haven't seen it, you haven't seen the anime. It's okay. There is a plot point where, I guess, a diplomat, and keep in mind I'm summarizing and it's been a while since I've seen it, so it might get a little muddied, but is taking his brain case and swapping it with, like, geishas for a
Oh,
while.
like
And
for funsies?
yes, so he
Just to like
basically
pop
gates,
into a geisha body just for a night?
or for a while, yeah. And so, but it's very secretive, and he doesn't want people to know, and I can't remember how it was
Actually,
exactly
that's
resolved,
sick as
but
hell. That should have, like, if you can take your brain case and put it in different things, like I feel like it should be almost mandatory to get to experience different bodies because just how important our bodies are to our perspective is so much. But that's just like my thought process because like,
so
oh
you
my
think
god,
you
what
think
if
it's
I could be
gross.
6 feet tall?
But here's the thing, the bodies and everything, like, once you take the brain out, does it matter what your previous body is? So if
Well,
you had your
but I
brain
guess
put
it has your
into,
memories in it.
okay, so, like, let me ask you this. So if you had your brain put into, let's say, a fully augmented android body, so you become a cyborg,
Yeah.
and then it gets swapped with somebody else's, does it matter, or are you basically what you're in?
I I think that your self impacts your form and your form impacts your self. For example, my mom is 6 feet tall. I am 5 feet tall. And how people treat us is different. Men treat mom with respect and anger because she is tall. And we denote tallness with some sort of, I don't know, people are weird about it. I don't know why. But I am short and I have to be much more aggressive to receive similar lesser levels of respect of my bodily autonomy because I am so much smaller and perceived as so much weaker.
But if you could
Even though I could pick my mom up,
if you could swap
like,
your body for something taller, are you that individual, or are you what's your mind inhabits? Let's put it that way.
my personality will always be meaner because I'm short and because people treat me as a short, have treated me as a short person. I'm always gonna have this. Well, I
This
mean,
disposition.
maybe I'll grow out of it if I'm taller and people are nicer to me. But I think that
But
it's both. I think that I am shaped by my lived physical experiences, and also that my lived physical experiences, like my mental, like inhabits my body. Like for example, I am happier when I have a certain type of shape. So gaining weight for me is not a bad thing because I become more shapely. And losing weight for me is bad because I become like more less shapely. Like I freak out because I'm like, I'm turning into a boy. And obviously I do not look like a boy to anybody. But to me, I freak out when I am not curvy and like mentally. Like I can feel because my body is fluctuated due to health reasons. So I can tell how my brain reacts to different bodies. So I know how much that matters to my brain. And I either accept it or I don't.
so
Like
so
so
one
that so my physical how my brain reacts to my body impacts how I allow my body be changed.
fair. So that's kind of why I do like the Ghost in the Shell, the standalone complex, which is the anime and the movie, because it does make you think about these things. I mean, you could just be like, oh, cool action, blah, and then not think about
So
the
to you,
stuff behind it.
what do you think it is?
I think, like I said, it's an interesting discussion. I think that for the anime or for the movie, it's definitely, you know, at a certain point, we're gonna have, and this is kind of like almost like, I don't even want to say cautionary, but like, look at where we're at with AI. A few years ago,
Yeah.
you know, people said, "Oh, you're never gonna have a computer make art," and while yeah, you may not consider it art, it's still making it, right? Just the process of it doing
True.
it is art.
It's absolutely shocking.
And
So okay, so but my question was you asked me like is a person like their body or mm, their like are they who they are in their new body or in their old body? What is your opinion on that? Like to you, are you if you put yourself in a different body, does that matter to you?
so uh, let me phrase this a little bit differently. Let's let's see this. Let's say you have somebody who was in the military and they got blown up via IED, so improvised explosive device, right? They have to get
Hmm.
a new leg and a new arm. Are they not the same person? I think they're the same person, of course. Why would they not be? But even though they have an artificial arm and an artificial leg, that still makes them them. Granted, their identity may have to change a little bit and have to adjust with the new, I guess you could call it augmentation.
Hmm.
But their person, who they are, will adapt.
Right.
So they're still the person, you know. Maybe obviously they're gonna have to deal with trauma or something else. But if we walk it back, I think that, to the extreme where, if you take your brain out and then put it in an android body, well, you may have to adapt and learn how to use it, and you may not be the same. You're still you.
Would you
Your experiences haven't changed, right? Your
would you
previous
need your
experiences.
android body to be similar to your current body, or would you be fine with your android body being different? And in which ways would you be okay with it being different or not?
Oh God, I don't know. I can't really answer that question because I don't really know. Um, I
Well,
think
I
it
mean,
would
okay,
be
so how
weird.
has your weight ever fluctuated?
I mean, a little bit here and there, but it's not like crazy amounts.
It's been pretty solid your whole life then.
I used to be a lot skinnier,
It
but
does changing, but does like change affect you?
no, not really. It does. I don't dwell
Have
on
you
it.
ever had a traumatic haircut?
But I mean,
No, it's a genuine
it,
question. Have you ever had a haircut and it been like borderline traumatic?
no.
Or just like it
I
upset you
I
in some
think
way? Somebody shaved off your beard and you like are like, this isn't my face.
no, no, not at all. Because I think it's the understanding of it'll grow back, and I think that's like just part of my mentality is I'm very easygoing, and if like, oh God, my hair gets cut wrong, I was like, I can just cut it in like a month. It's not that big of a deal. Or, uh, I'll just grow out my beard. It's not that big of a deal. Or it's too much. I gotta trim it back. You know, I feel like
Have you ever felt that shock of seeing your look and it almost feels like a tightness in your chest and like
no,
something's wrong and you can't like it's not you in the mirror almost?
no.
Oh. Okay. Or you
uh,
ever like be like, yes. Like you ever put on a really good outfit and you're like, yes, this is me. This is my outfit. This is my guy.
not quite like that, but I go, oh yeah, I look good today. I have had that. Or it's like,
Okay.
oh yeah, looking sharp. Like, when you go for an interview, obviously you're
Yeah.
gonna try and look your best.
Okay. I'm just trying to gauge how strong your like reactions and your internal sense of outer identity is.
So we'll
I'm
put it
just
this way:
curious.
I will be the first person in line for augmented arms or legs or other kind of stuff if they ever come out with that kind of stuff. I am all for the improvement of human beings in whatever capacity it is, if that makes sense. It doesn't
Well,
like
do you do any cosmetic surgery?
I have a lot of tattoos.
That's a great point, actually.
So while cosmetic surgery isn't really my thing, I get why people do it. There is going too far though with that kind of stuff.
Oh,
But
it,
I feel like people
I
do that on
it
a
depends. Well,
superficial
it
level.
depends on if they're going for it or not, right? Because there are people who are going for a certain thing, and it gets like people who put filler in their face and their face just blows up like a puffer fish,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Those are
okay.
it's like it's both tragic and hilarious to me versus people who go there's two different kinds of going too far, right? That kind of like botched, overdone like body dysmorphia going where you can't tell what is a line of real or not anymore. Like all the Kardashians are so
Yeah.
augmented that they have to be photoshopped and they look very unnatural in person. And then there's like somebody who's like wants to look like a lizard person and they augment themselves specifically to do that. And I respect the choice to look like a lizard person.
So yeah, and I may not agree with that fully, but that's fine. they have, I
Oh,
believe, in
I
your
mean,
own body,
honestly, if
autonomy.
you think about it, the if it like the shock reaction in me makes it the purest form of art.
So, but like, somebody who's not happy with their nose, they think it's too big or something and gets it done, and that's the only thing they do because that makes them, there is a fine line between, like addiction to there is people
I
who have
mean,
like addiction to that kind of surgery and stuff and take things way
there
too
is
far.
there is addiction, and there is something to be said about assimilation and like the pressure to do it. Like for example, I have been given Botox for my migraines, and it actually changes the way my face makes expressions. And I'm just like, oh, this is not my face anymore. This is a weird face. I don't like this face anymore. And that just something like that changes your face so much. So,
So
but
there
I
is
mean,
something
I have
can
to
oh
I have to accept that my body is being changed by trying to like be managing my health, and I have to accept it as it is.
yeah.
But and let's go back to being cyborgs.
So
We went on a little bit of a sidetrack.
well, I wanted to talk about something kind of related to this, but
Yeah,
kind of tangentially, and I thought it was fascinating, and I did want to kind of bring it up. So,
yeah.
have you heard of um? Oh gosh, how do I explain this? So, it's obsolescence due to progress.
Hmm.
So, I'll give you an example, and this
That would
is
be normal obsolescence, not
well,
planned obsolescence.
and maybe not planned, but
Well, that's what I'm
unintentional.
saying is right. Well, most that's like normal obsolescence versus
S-
planned
So,
obsolescence.
let's say with the advent of, you know, maybe extreme body modifications or, Android becoming an Android, right? And your previous body becomes obsolescence, right? Well, what happens when we progress so quick? This is not necessarily to like the kind of
That
argument
human
we're talking.
beings have parts that become obsolete.
What's to say, oh, the baby is born, let's put a new heart in him so he can live for 500 years immediately, because that's
I
just
think
what
it's
we do
something.
now.
I think that's something interesting to be seen that people have. For example, with cosmetic surgery, people bodies go physically in and out of style. Like you have people getting BBLs, and now that it's more mass market optimized, like more people can get them. Now that they're median or more accessible, they're no longer in style. They're no obsolete. So then the Kardashians got all of their BBLs reversed and got like, I don't know, probably lipo or some shit
Good
to
God.
change their body.
The frick?
It's honestly kind
Do-
of insane if you think about it, but
yeah.
so we are on that level now. Your body, that your cosmetic procedures can go obsolete fashion wise.
But okay, well, so what if we're not talking
But
about fashion, but like actual
people's
utilitarian
people's
purpose?
on disability, their bodies go they're very important supports. Their their medical supports can go obsolete. That business can go out of company. They can stop getting software, or they can sign up for a medical trial. It can significantly improve their quality of life, but it doesn't get improved by insurance, so they take that implant out and it's gone. They're just gone. They have no limb anymore.
So what I
So that
fear,
happens.
what I
That's
fear,
already existing.
well, hold on, let me explain this. So what I fear is companies like, let's say a pacemaker. Well, I'll use this as an example. So
Okay.
let's say a pacemaker gets upgraded to a bionic heart, right? Okay, well now
Hmm.
you have the heart, you're doing fantastic, it'll be great, right? Helps you to live. Well, Is there going to be a software update? Do I need to get the current patch of Heart version 1.3? What if these companies go, you know what? We can make some extra money. How about this? You can buy a subscription service to our Heart plan. It's not like your other one. This is the premium one. So when you're working out, it'll work harder for you.
Have you heard of Repo the Genetic Opera?
Yes,
That's the plot of that, right? I haven't watched
kind
it
of.
yet, but
Kind of.
that
Similar.
happens to disabled people already. That already happens. Do you know how much do you think a wheelchair costs?
A couple $1,000s.
Yes, $5,000.
Is it 5,000?
How much do you think it is?
Uh, 3 to 4.
Like you said, a couple. They're more expensive, like than a car, like more than $30,000,
Is it really $30,000 for a wheelchair?
and a lot of times they're not covered.
30.
And then, how expensive do you think a wheelchair van is?
Oh, those are super expensive.
Right?
120,000.
Yeah, okay, so
Okay.
that is a lot for a wheelchair van. And um,
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying, corporations are pretty much already ripping us off, and I mean, hopefully that's not our future. And that kind of reminds me of like this dystopian future.
well, I think Ghost in the Shell is not as dystopian as some of the other ones we've seen because the main character in this example kind of works for the government, so you don't really see the absolute worst. You see somebody who
Yeah.
is supported within their chases, and so we only see some parts, but a lot of cyberpunk in general is taking concepts that already exist and expanding upon them.
Yeah.
So I brought up disabled people because those are things that do happen. It's just what if we had a whole society of people based on that? Like it happened to everybody.
No, I get you. And there was some mention in the movie where they're saying just how ridiculous it is for the upkeep of the cybernetic bodies, and that if they were to retire, they'd pretty much have to give back their entire body, their case. There'd be almost nothing left of them.
You know, metaphorically, I wonder the parallels between that and also people who retire from the military, how much the military takes.
Yeah, I agree with you on the military stuff, but that's kind of a conversation for another day. We'll kind of wrap it up right there. So, thanks everybody for coming out. We highly recommend you watch Ghost in the Shell. It's a fantastic movie. The TV show, the anime is all great. So, have a great evening. Thank you for coming out. Thanks for listening. And have good discussions.